In a fierce and very bloody battle that ensued between their respective armies, Hulagu was victorious, in consequence of which, the roads being rendered unsafe for travellers, the brothers could not attempt to return by the way they came, and it was recommended to them, as the only practicable mode of reaching Constantinople, to proceed in an easterly direction by an unfrequented route, so as to skirt the limits of Barca's territories. Accordingly, they made their way to a town named Ukaka, situated on the confines of the kingdom of the Western Tartars. Leaving that place, and advancing still further, they crossed the Tigris, one of the 4 rivers of paradise, and came to a desert, the extent of which was 17 days' journey, wherein they found neither town, castle, nor any substantial building, but only Tartars with their herds, dwelling in tents on the plain. Having passed this tract, they arrived at length at a well-built city called Bukhara, in a province of that name, belonging to the dominions of Persia, and the noblest city of that kingdom, but governed by a prince whose name was Barak. Here, from inability to proceed further, they remained 3 years. It happened, while these brothers were in Bukhara, that a person of consequence and gifted with eminent talents made his appearance there. He was proceeding as ambassador from Hulagu, before mentioned, to the great Khan, supreme chief of all the Tartars, named Kublai, whose residence was at the extremity of the continent in a direction between northeast and east. Not having ever before had an opportunity, although he wished it, of seeing any natives of Italy, he was gratified in a high degree at meeting and conversing with these brothers, who had now become proficient in the Tartar language. And after associating with them for several days, and finding their manners agreeable to him, he proposed to them that they should accompany him to the presence of the great Khan, who would be pleased by their appearance at his court, which had not hitherto been visited by any person from their country, adding assurances that they would be honourably received and recompensed with many gifts. Convinced as they were that their endeavours to return homeward would expose them to the most imminent risks, they agreed to this proposal, and recommending themselves to the protection of the Almighty, they set out on their journey in the suite of the ambassador, attended by several Christian servants whom they had brought with them from Venice. The course they took at first was between the northeast and north, and an entire year was over before they were able to reach the imperial residence, in consequence of the extraordinary delays occasioned by the snows and the swelling of the rivers, which obliged them to halt until the former had melted and the floods had subsided. Many things worthy of admiration were observed by them in the progress of their journey, but which are here omitted, as they will be later described by Marco Polo. Chapter 2. Being introduced to the presence of the great Khan, Kublai, the travellers were received by him with the condescension and affability that belonged to his character, and as they were the first Latins who had made their appearance in that country, they were entertained with feasts and honoured with other marks of distinction. Entering graciously into conversation with them, he made earnest inquiries on the subject of the western parts of the world, of the emperor, of the Romans, and of other Christian kings and princes. He wished to be informed of their relative consequence, the extent of their possessions, the manner in which justice was administered in their several kingdoms and principalities, how they conducted themselves in warfare, and above all he questioned them particularly respecting the Pope, the affairs of the Church, and the religious worship and doctrine of the Christians. Being well instructed and discreet men, they gave appropriate answers upon all these points, and as they were perfectly acquainted with the Tartar language, they expressed themselves always in becoming terms, insomuch that the great Khan, holding them in high estimation, frequently commanded their attendance. When he had obtained all the information that the two brothers communicated with so much good sense, he expressed himself well satisfied, and having formed